It's time again for the Insiders with Chuck Chvala and Scott Jensen, sponsored by the Wisconsin Counties Association and the Tommy G. Thompson Center on Public Leadership.
Hi, I'm Chuck Chvala, former Senate Majority Leader.
And I'm Scott Jensen, former Assembly Speaker.
We're the Insiders. So, Scott, we've got the big Supreme Court race. Partisan control of the court is going to hang in the balance this spring. So it's Schimel versus Crawford. What's your take?
Well, I think this is going to be very different than the last race. In the last race, the Democrats had an extraordinary amount of money, and they were able to make the campaign essentially a referendum on abortion. I don't think that's going to be the case this time. I think really this election is, in this case, the conservative candidate Schimel is essentially matching the fundraising that is going on the Democratic side, which didn't happen last time. Our candidate was wildly outspent. I don't think that'll be the case this time. I think they're going to be both very close in the money race. And I think that the election is going to be about more than just abortion. I think it's going to be about ideological control of the court. I think it's going to be about whether or not people should bring an ideological agenda to the court, or that they should just be reading and enforcing the laws. And I think that's why Schimel has started off with advertising that's focused on law enforcement and all the strong support he's had for being tough on crime over the years. That's not only in an effort to consolidate his base, but also to inoculate him against the charges that are going to be coming from Democrats that this guy who's been a prosecutor almost all of his life is apparently weak on crime. We'll see how well that goes. But I think this is going to be a very, very close race. I think we both predicted this is going to be an incredible amount of money, most of it coming from outside of the state of Wisconsin. I think Schimel's off to a good start in this race.
I've heard, and I don't know that this is true. I want to state that up front, but I've heard that Schimel let someone off who was accused anyway of sexual assault of 2 children without any jail time. I think that will wipe away any thought of tough on crime. If there's anything to that or anything like that that's out there, that wipes that advantage away. Secondly, I think that even though I was definitely wrong, that I thought abortion would play more of a role in the Trump election, it did not. But I do believe in Wisconsin, because the Supreme Court really does hold in their hands what will happen on abortion in this state. I think that will be the deciding factor in this race. And you've heard me say this before, and by the way, why is it different in this race than in Trump? As everyone knows, this is a much different electorate in the spring. It used to be a very conservative electorate, very advantageous to the Republicans and their conservative allies in the court. It is now the most progressive ballot that we have in Wisconsin. That's a huge advantage for the Democrats, and the abortionist will be thing. Ideology. Actually, if it is about ideology, everybody knows that both sides have their ideology. Nobody's buying the fact that the progressives are ideological and the Republicans aren't. See abortion, for example. So the bottom line here is that even if it's ideology, Democrats win. Here's what's going to happen. There's going to be, again, more movement toward the progressive side in the suburbs of Milwaukee. Dane County will produce an even greater vote, not than the presidential race, than the race which was for Wisconsin Supreme Court 1 year ago. And so I see this being a race where I would not be surprised to see Crawford gain more than a 5% advantage. I think there will be somewhat less intensity to the abortion issue, although I think 30-second ads can bring that back. And that might result in it not being the 11-point margin, wasn't it, that Janet Protasewicz got, who ran, by the way, a marvelous campaign. I think at the end of the day, you're going to see a very strong vote. And I think after this race, it's only conservatives. And conservatives are going to have to look for a new strategy, because it's definitely not going to be winning the Wisconsin Supreme Court in order to get their agenda adopted or to prevent Democrats from passing their agenda in the legislature.
Well, in these big races in Wisconsin now, where there's both sides are well armed and have lots of money, they tend to end up being 1% races. They tend to be extraordinarily close. And I think this race is going to revert to form, and it's going to be much like that. The Republicans are obviously pretty aware of the fact that the base of people who vote in the spring elections has changed. And they're going to spend a lot of money to try to change that. They're going to try to be turning people out who don't normally vote in these races. And there are issues that the court has mistakenly put on its agenda that will help them with that turnout.
We'll see, but I'll be interested to see what happens afterwards. But there's been a lot of money spent on both sides in the past. And I don't think you can move a certain number of people, but the history of this is that you cannot change this from a spring turnout election into even a gubernatorial. You're not going to see 50% of Wisconsinites turn out in this race, and that's less than the 70-some% that turned out against Trump. So we'll see, but I feel very good about the nature of the dynamic in the spring race and also of the issues before them. And I think that the money roughly equal, that's fine. I think we'll win that kind of a dynamic.
I'm sure we'll be talking about this race again.
We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to The Insiders with Chuck Chvala and Scott Jensen, sponsored by the Wisconsin Counties Association and the Tommy G. Thompson Center on Public Leadership.